Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the Rochester City Council Committee's Finance Committee to order, and I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Councilmember Evans.
Present.
Councilmember Harris.
Here.
Councilmember Patterson.
Here.
Vice President Lightfoot.
Here.
President Scott.
Here.
We have two pieces of legislation before us. The first one being introductory number 294, a resolution relating to the standard workday and retirement reporting for council members. Any questions, comments, or concerns on that legislation?
Move it.
Is it been moved? Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Madam Clerk?
Abstain.
You have one abstention, I believe.
Yes.
Okay. The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 4-0-1 into the record with Councilmember Harris abstaining.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
You're welcome.
Introductory number 295, authorizing professional services agreement for payroll processing services. Questions, comments, or concerns?
Move it.
Second.
Been moved. There's second. Been properly moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. That concludes our legislation. Any other business to come before the Finance Committee?
The clerk will enter
All
the
right.
affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And if there's nothing else, we are adjourned, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
At this time, I ask the clerk to call the Neighborhood and Business Development Committee meeting to order, and I ask the clerk to call the roll.
Councilmember Patterson.
Here.
Councilmember Lupien.
Here.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Here.
Vice President Lightfoot.
Present.
President Scott.
Here.
Okay, so we've got a couple items here today. One of the things I would like folks to do, if you have questions, just put up, throw up a flare in the chat so we'll know who's in what order and we can all see it. And we will move through this stuff as quickly and as efficiently as we can. So let's begin. Introductory number 296, authorizing the sale of real estate.
Did we call the roll?
Oh, yeah, we called roll.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, introductory number 296, authorizing the sale of real estate. Questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, I need a motion in a second.
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Councilmember Ortiz, seconded by Councilmember Lupien. And now we vote. All in favor of the item? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed to the item? The item passes.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Introductory number 297, granting permanent easements to the County of Monroe for the installation of fiber optic cable. Questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, I need a motion in a second.
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Councilmember Ortiz, seconded by Councilmember Lupien. All in favor of the item? Aye.
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 All opposed to the item? The item passes.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Introductory number 298, determination and findings related to the acquisition of properties for George Mathers Ford's School Number 4 Campus Modernization Project. Questions, comments, or concerns?
Yes.
Councilmember Lupien.
I have concerns about this project as it would displace several tenants from their homes during the pandemic. So I'd like to hear, I have some questions around, when will the construction begin? Is there any, well, I'll ask that question first. So when is construction expected to begin?
I believe that Alan Williams from the Rochester School Modernization Board is on the line, or Commissioner Jones will be able to answer when does construction start.
2 minutes.
The first process, before we even talk about construction or deconstruction, would be after we obtain the properties. So I couldn't give you that timeline until we obtain the properties.
And is this part of phase 2 or phase 3?
This is part of phase 2
Okay.
for the phase 2 program, part of the project at school number 4, the $30 million revitalization that's going on at that school that we're in the final stages of completing.
I guess, could you say if it would happen this year, or would it take place during a school year, or would you wait until the summer?
Our plan is to complete it this year.
Okay, because I believe school number 4 is coming back to that building for this school year, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so would construction happen while they were in school?
This property is not located on the school. It's acquiring property that's across the street from the school.
Right, I understand, but there would be construction going on. So I just didn't know if it was something that, you know, we're acquiring properties and we're targeting next summer, or if we're actually going to try and get it done this year. So I think I have my answer.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, we haven't seen a drawing of what this will look like. Is that something that can get provided?
Sure.
Okay. Because you know, having looked at the site, there is a lot of green space there already behind the school and to the side of it, and directly across the street there's some vacant lots, you know, that could potentially be used for a parking lot. And so just wondering, you know, I think it's a serious matter anytime that, you know, people are displaced from their homes, and just wondering, you know, is there any adjustments that can be made to the design to limit any need to take homes? So just kind of curious of what those designs look like.
So yes, and it's been an extensive review process, and I believe that the Joint School Construction Board, as well as the team, has worked directly with the homeowners for the property. And so that's what the legislation is dealing with, is working with the people that actually own the homes. And I believe that if and when those people decide to sell the home, whether that's to the city or a private person, we would, you know, in this case with the city, we would work to help whoever lives there to be able to be relocated as they transition out. So this project has been on the books for a number of years and gone through several different iterations. Is there another question? I think you said that, Councilmember Gruber, do you have a question?
Gruber?
Yeah, I do. So thank you, Mayor and Chair Patterson. So my major question around this is the concern about tenants. I understand that we're talking about, Mayor, you talked about talking to the owners of the buildings, but it seems as though some of these are rented out. And I have two concerns. One is specific to COVID. I mean, and I know that Commissioner Kirkmeyer has done a tremendous amount of work on this subject, but you know, in my work with Peace Village, we know that there's a ton of people in this community who actually, there's dollars from the county to house them. And we have a shortage of apartments that landlords are even showing right now. And again, I understand that the administration has worked on this, but I'm very concerned about the idea that we might cut someone a check and say, go find an apartment, but there actually aren't apartments to find. So I'm wondering if you can comment on that, if someone can comment on that.
We actually work closely with the tenants and a realtor to provide a high level of concierge service to them to help them find a new place. And that's part of what we've done in other situations.
Okay. So if this introductory moves forward, I love Commissioner Jones will always bust out the concierge service. I know that he's serious about that. He believes in customer service. But I will say, and I don't think this is the fault of anyone in particular in the administration, but there have been times before, even in my short, 2+ years on council, where there has been eminent domain on something and the tenants don't hear from the city, they hear from the landlord, and the landlord asks them to leave before they have to. And that's something that I know Councilmember Ortiz and I worked on extensively a couple years back. And I think it's particularly concerning for something like that to happen in the middle of a pandemic. So what are the controls to make sure that nobody gets miscommunicated to by their landlords in this case?
First of all, this is not domain. This is a agreed upon sale that we've been working with the landlords and the folks there for over 1.5 years on. We finally were able to work it into the budget and work with everyone. Everything's aligned. And we're going to make sure that we not only have a good arrangement and agreement with the actual landlords, but also with the tenants, making sure that we are accommodating their needs and making sure that they're a part of it. The whole process is about the educational experience and the community experience that's going on there. And that's what we're trying to have, a win-win opportunity, education and making sure that we have a good place for the occupants to basically have a new place. And we'll work with them closely to do that.
Thanks. So, and that's actually a great point of clarification. So because this is not eminent domain, because this is all negotiation, part of the problem is that with eminent domain, there's kind of a shroud of secrecy over it because there can't be particular communications because there's so many different things that have to happen. But this, because it's negotiation, the reality is that as soon as this is done, there will be a conversation with both the owner and the tenant, and that concierge service will be provided right from the jump. That's your assurance, Commissioner?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Ortiz?
Thank you. These ones are always difficult. And I understand everything that folks are saying in terms of the process and what can and cannot be shared, all of that. I just, Norm or Alan, can you just clarify a little bit more when we talk about the concierge service and all of, because I think that that's really where people, we got messages that, obviously the tenants didn't know. I understand why. So I get all of that. But can you explain a little bit more? Because obviously the $1,000 cap is what immediately sticks out, where folks are like, oh my gosh, that's not going to be enough. Can you just tell us a little bit more, kind of beginning to end, what that concierge service really entails so that it helps us better understand the amount of assistance that's provided to tenants?
Well, Councilperson Ortiz, this is something that we've utilized when we had to relocate folks to meet the timelines and the schedule at School 54.
Right.
We have a realtor that we have a relationship with that will come in and work directly with the tenant. And we have some flexibility, a little bit more flexibility, because this is the RSMP board that's doing it. And it's not what we're doing from a standpoint of the city of Rochester. And RSMP can't purchase the property. It can be purchased through the city and then transferred over to RSMP, and we pay the actual city for the property. So the fact that it's the RSMP doing the actual negotiating and helping people move into different locations provides us with a certain amount of flexibility.
Right. So traditionally, because obviously we've done this a few times, I think also part of the concern is always, especially right now, is ensuring that folks end up in a better situation than what they're currently in. So is there anything, even in past examples, where we're able to highlight, someone went from a 3-bedroom, ended up at least in a minimum the same amount or better, or, I'm just trying to get a better picture here and putting people at ease, if you will, in terms of, I love where I live now. I understand that the services I'm going to be provided, but at the end of the day, will I be better and the same and or better than where I was before? And I think that's one of the biggest concerns for a lot of the families that are currently in this house, in their houses.
Well, we did do School 54, and we did have this similar type of discussion. And right now, all the folks that we had to help with their relocation, they're all pleased.
They are.
They have not come back to council or to the mayor or to the RSMP with any complaints. And
Right.
we, as public servants, and that's what we all are. It's our goal to serve the public, and that's what we
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
and
This made me think of something. Because we do this, is there a way for us to, as part of the process moving forward, to be able to do some formal surveys or tracking or something so that we can better understand how these things end up for tenants or property owners? Is there something that we can do for future that may assist us in feeling better when these type of things come around, where we say, you know what, here is an official survey, here's official tracking where folks landed, so that it really helps folks better better feel for projects in the future?
That's something that we can ask, but it would be up to the person to actually fill it out. So we could develop something like that and see if they would, after relocation, maybe after 3 months, we can get a report back. Is that, I don't think that would be a problem.
Yeah, I think that would help, especially, if we're going to continue to grow and continue to have development projects. Obviously, we want to do those types of things. I think that would help. And then I guess the last thing that I have, which is just a little concerning again, is really just a reviewing process and level of communication. There was one notice that we received that said that one of the residents was part of the planning, was part of, all the things that were happening over the last year or two, but had no idea that their particular properties, if you will, were in question as part of the project. So I'm not sure how that works or doesn't work, or how accurate, quite frankly, that is. But it would just seem a little disturbing that they weren't even aware that certain properties were on the docket for expansion. Norm, can you just talk a little bit more about the type of information that was provided during some of these public opportunities?
I'm not aware of that correspondence. We can look into that.
Okay.
But all of everything that we do is open. Our meetings are open, and we'll look into it if you can share the information with me.
Okay. All right. We can forward it to you so you can see it. I don't know if you received it, but happy to forward it.
All right.
Thank you.
And just a quick question, and I apologize for not throwing it up in there, but for that period of time between when the city takes possession of the property and the tenant moves out of the property, is the tenant required to pay rent?
No.
Okay. So for however long that they're there, whether it's a month or 2 months or however, they will not be required to pay rent while they're looking for an additional piece of property.
Right. Well, it's our goal to help them, find a new place as quickly as possible.
Okay. Councilmember Pio?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, that actually kind of talked to one thing I wanted to bring up, was the fact that if we try and make it so that we close on this home in the middle of the month, is there a way to make it so that the tenant does not, number one, have to pay that month's rent to the landlord, the current landlord, and number two, if we could require that the deposit is given back to the client or back to the tenant prior to closing, that way they have those 2 additional funds to further help with their search.
Councilperson Pio, we actually, as part of the actual transaction, we hold the security deposit, that being RSMP, and once the transaction is completed, we will provide that to the actual tenant.
Excellent, thank you.
So Councilmember Lupien, you said you had an additional question?
Yes. So there were public meetings about this?
There were public meetings in regards to
The project
the school modernization program. Absolutely.
for school number 4?
Yes.
Yeah.
can you send the, like we do with other things, the meeting attendance and any comments that we collect through that process, and kind of when the meetings were held, to help get an understanding of, because it's one of the tenants lives right across the street from school number 4, is on the PTA, and like we said, it's surprising that she didn't know that this was happening when she was so connected to this school. And so I'd like to see those in future projects too. And then just raising up the feeling that has been expressed that when tenants don't find out until after or shortly before, that they're feeling like their voice doesn't matter, like they don't matter. And I'd like to see if there's some kind of requirement that they can be a part of the process to, if there's a public hearing or, any other opportunity, that they know ahead of time that they also get to have their voice heard.
I think that there's a different process that the Rochester Joint School Construction Board goes through than what is required from the city of Rochester. And so these are two separate entities. The Joint School Construction Board, they go through their process. They come to the city with their proposals following the way that it is outlined by state law. And the city's role in this, because all of the school buildings and the school's property is technically owned by the city, but it's operated by the schools, the school board, that's the process by which they have to go by. They can provide you with their information from their public hearings and from their outreach, but it's not something that is driven by the city of Rochester. It's something that's driven by the Joint School Construction Board. As it pertains to, tenants being involved in that particular process, it's a private transaction. And I believe that by constitutional law, I'm putting on my other hat, that, anyone can do what they want to do with their property. If they want to sell it, if they want to lease it, they can do that. And if it wasn't the city or a private, a transaction between two private people, then the tenant would not necessarily be involved in that. And so I think that we would be overstepping our bounds to, for the property owner to notify, to negotiate, to involve a person that does not have any standing in the particular transaction. And so that's a legal question that we would have to need answered. I'm not trying to debate or argue with you. I'm not saying that it's a bad point. I'm just saying that there's a legal question there that would need to be answered, and it's something that we can look into.
Yeah, because they serve a dual role, right? They are a community member and a tenant. And if we're having public meetings where the community gets to know what's going on, I think it's only fair that the tenants also get, a heads up about those community meetings specifically. So that's all I'm saying.
I agree with you. I definitely agree with you. And remember that school number 4 has been under construction for the last, I believe, 2 years. And so these meetings would have happened 2 years ago. The meetings about the school, what's being done, the design, all of that would have happened 2 years ago. It wouldn't have been something that would have happened in the last 6 months. So I think that the negotiation of the property and the sale of property and all of that is something that has been going on for the last year, but the school has been under construction for the last 2 years. So I agree that everyone should be provided notice, tenants, landlords, of what's happening. I'm just saying that to be involved in the private transaction, in the negotiations between the landlord and whatever that private entity is, I don't believe legally that can happen. But it's something that we can look into.
Yeah, just following up on that, you say it between two private entities, but it's us, right? Because we own the buildings, and so it's really between the city and the tenants, or the city and the landowners, right?
She's
It is,
giving you,
the transaction is a private transaction. The landlord is private. So we cannot negotiate with
Oh,
somebody.
you're saying the nature of it.
The nature of the transaction is a private transaction.
Got it. Okay. And I think my final question is around grant funding. If this project is delayed, you know, potentially until all the tenants are 100% secured in finding housing, you know, what is the implications for grant funding if there's a delay?
So this is not a grant funded project. This is a project that is bonded, and it's through the state Department of Education. It is, so I don't want you to think that this is a grant funded project. So it's not something, this is a project that's been under the construction for a number of years. We are currently in phase 2. We did phase 1, we're in phase 2. We are looking to do phase 3 to actually modernize and bring all of our city schools in alignment with other schools so that our children can receive the quality education that they deserve in the 21st century. So this is not, you can't necessarily move forward with trying to find housing and do all of that, because at the end of the day, if the project doesn't go forward, if the landlord isn't compensated, if the transaction isn't completed, then there may be no need to do any of the other stuff that you're talking about. And I think that what the commissioner was saying was that once the transaction goes forward and they know that the landlord is going to sign the documents, then they work with the tenant on a concierge level, and they are able to go possibly above and beyond what the city and what we're regulated and what we are required to do, because they are a separate entity. And that is something that they would work directly with the tenant on, in this point of that the people that they have worked with on the back end have not come back and complained afterwards because of the service that they've been provided.
Mm-hmm. Understood.
Okay, are there any other questions, comments, or concerns on this item? Seeing none, I need a motion in a second.
move it.
Moved by Council Vice President Lightfoot, seconded by President Scott. All in favor of the item?
Aye.
All opposed to the item?
Nay.
Opposed by Council Members Lupian and Ortiz. Voted in favor by Council Members Patterson, President.
Okay, the clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 3-2 into the record with Councilmember Lupian. And who was the other person that voted no? I'm sorry.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Ortiz, okay. Voting no.
All right, introductory number 299, authorizing the acquisition by negotiation. And I'm going to modify this because, well, no, but authorizing the acquisition by negotiation or condemnation of property for the George Mathers School Number 4 Campus Modernization Project. These two items are related, 298 and 299, but I will ask for the record, are there any questions, comments, or concerns on 299? Seeing none.
Move it.
There's an amendment on
Yep,
Yes.
299.
There's an amendment.
So we need to amend this item. And the amendment will remove the properties at 206 Dr. Samuel McCree Way and 183 Jefferson Terrace. The amendment will additionally add language that includes compensation from the Rochester Joint School Construction Board, authorizing funding for relocation assistance, and the amendment will remove condemnation of parcels from the proposed legislation. So I need a
I move to amend.
motion to amend, and I need a second to amend.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to amend. All in favor of amending the item, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed to amending the item, please say nay.
Nay.
All right. The amendment of the item is opposed by Council Members Lupian and Council Members Ortiz, and now we can go forward and vote on the item as amended. So the item as amended, all in
Move
favor,
it.
moved by Council Vice President Lightfoot, seconded by President Scott. All in favor, and now we vote. All in favor of the item?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed to the item, please say nay.
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 Item is opposed by Council Members Lupien and Ortiz.
Okay, the clerk will enter the affirmative vote for the amendment into the record as 3-2 with Councilmember Lupien and Ortiz voting no. And I will also enter into the record the vote as amended, 3-2, Councilmember Lupien and Councilmember Ortiz voting no.
Introductory number 300, amending the Consolidated Community Development Plan 2019-20 Annual Action Plan, appropriating a second award of emergency solution grants, coronavirus funds, and authorizing agreements to provide additional eviction prevention and homeless services. Questions, comments, or concerns? On introductory number 300. Seeing, Council Member.
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to say thank you. I know that there's been a ton of work on all of this, and there's been an extensive process to be able to support tenants and property owners throughout this, very difficult time. And I think that what step we're taking here, particularly with the access to counsel, is a huge step. And I want to thank everyone who worked so hard on all of this. I think it's going to make a very big difference for many of our tenants. And so thank you so much.
Councilmember Gruber, did you have something?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, since we first talked about this, the moratorium on evictions has been extended. So I'm just wondering if someone, first of all, can someone provide clarity on what the new executive order was?
The last executive order regarding that I know of, unless Tim knows of something different, stated that if tenants had hardship and could prove hardship due to COVID-19, then they would be free from being evicted. But they would have to show the court that, and I believe that Judge Doran has been working with our council as well as others on a possible specific coronavirus court. And so, Tim, if you want to talk about that, I don't know if it's completed. I know that you all had a meeting earlier this week.
Yeah, we've had a series of meetings over the last 2 weeks with various subdivisions of it. The new COVID court will open, we believe, September 8th. And we'll first have to deal with the pre-COVID eviction orders that were rendered and never exercised. And then we're setting up a system. There's approximately 400 pending complaints against tenants, and we're setting up a series to try to negotiate those under a process before it ever gets to the judge. So we figure we can deal with probably 30 to 40% of the 400 without ever going to court. And then we're going to get the counsel provision going. So each of these tenants is going to be a designated counsel, and then we're going to go back through a pre-trial trial, the second stage, before it ever goes to trial, the third stage. So the volume is going to be overwhelming, and there's going to be probably 3 judges contributing, because based on calculations, they can't do more than probably 30 matters per session, and they're going to do a session in the morning and a session in the afternoon. So both Judge Johnson and Judge Doran are incredible what they're putting together to try to figure this out. There's a lot of people working on it. It's all the volunteer legal services folks, all the Law New York folks. There's probably 12 or 15 people on the committee.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. I think what I was referring to is when we were talking about this legislation at the time, the moratorium on COVID-related evictions for non-payment, I believe, was at August 20th, and I think now it's October 4th is the date that I believe is popping into my head. I'm just wondering, all the stuff aside from the courts and what we're doing, let's say hypothetically some of this work doesn't start until October. How does it change the dollars that we're expensing right now? Does it change anything in terms of our timeline or anything like that?
This is Tina Foster. I'm sorry, was someone else going to respond to that? I'm
No, go
aware
ahead.
of that.
Tina is on the committee that I'm speaking of.
The October 4th date is what just came out yesterday. It is the memorandum from the chief judges, the chief administrative judge of New York State, Judge Marks, basically extending the status quo as it is until October 4th. However, allowing backlog cases to go ahead and be processed in the interim. So you're basically setting up a priority scheme. So the courts are they're going to start to deal with the backlog, and they're basically going to prioritize cases based on when they were filed, who has counsel, a whole number of issues. I think that's going to be able to sort of allow the courts to start dealing with the cases now as opposed to wait. And part of the concern there is that if we do not start to process cases, the moratorium does not absolve people of the obligation to pay. It just delays the eviction. So not, just delaying the proceedings doesn't really solve the underlying issues. So we're trying to get ahead of that now.
Thanks. Just one last question for me, and Tina, it's probably best for you to answer it. In terms of these dollars that we're committing for right to counsel, is that are you and your colleagues going to include the people who had movements for eviction prior to COVID as part of the folks you represent?
We are planning to open up next week and to start serving people next week. So whoever calls the line, we will serve them. And I don't think that there's a distinction to be made. For us, we were already providing some degree of services prior to this funding. So there's no reason that we would stop serving people. It might take a while to ramp up to the full capacity, but yeah, we're going now, essentially.
Fantastic. Thank you for all the work you do, and thanks to the administration for helping us put this together.
Thank you to all of you for your support.
Are there any other questions, comments, concerns on introductory number 300?
If I may, this is Alex Turner from Catholic Family Center. I can also speak to Councilmember Gruber's question about expensing dollars. So we're running our eviction prevention program, and we just got assurances from John Oster at the city, who's interpreting HUD's requirements of our ESG eviction prevention program. And we are able to serve because tenants can still be brought to court under the moratorium and under the Safe Harbor Act. That allows us to continue to serve clients even if the moratorium or the Safe Harbor Act are extended. As long as a tenant can still be brought to court, we can still provide eviction prevention assistance based on our interpretation of HUD's memo. So we're also ready to go. Thank you.
All right, so just to—
I have a question.
Just a quick other, hang on 1 second, Mary.
Yes.
Hey, Mary,
with the—
please. Mary, I'm talking, 1 second. So just a quick comment. I also want to commend the administration for reaching back out to HUD to make sure that we can extend those services to other folks. This is tremendous work that you guys have done. Dana, I see that you're here in the place of Gary Kirkmeyer. So please share to the team and also to Gary that the great work you guys have done is greatly appreciated. Councilmember Lupien?
Yes. So with the right to counsel pilot, how long will it take until that can be in action? And, with court opening on, was it September 8th? Will there be additional capacity ready to handle the cases?
Yes, ma'am, there will. We'll be ready by September 8th. And we've already, for VLSP, we've already hired today. I believe someone accepted an offer. So we'll be having additional staffing coming on board right away. And we also have 10 volunteer attorneys trained from the Rochester Black Bar Association who will be helping immediately in the interim until all of our capacity is up and running.
That's great news. Thank you. Yeah, this is really wonderful.
Seeing no other comments, questions, or concerns regarding introductory number 300, it's time to vote. All in
Motion to
need a
adopt.
need a motion in a second.
Move it.
Moved by Council Vice President Lightfoot, seconded by Council Member Ortiz. Okay, so let's vote. All in favor of the item, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. The item passes.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Introductory number 301, authorizing agreements for the Home Rochester Asset Control Area Program. Questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, I need a motion in a second.
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Councilmember Ortiz, seconded by Councilmember Lupien. And now we vote. All in favor of the item, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed to the item, please say nay. The item passes.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
All right. Introductory number 324, authorizing building demolition and abatement of properties acquired for the Flower City School number 54 and George Mather Forbes School number 4 campus modernization project. Questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, I need a motion and a second.
Move it.
Moved by Council Vice President Lightfoot,
Second.
seconded by Council President Scott. And now we vote. All in favor of the item, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed to the item, please say nay.
Nay. And I'd just like to make sure I just qualify that. At this point, I understand that 54 is part of it, and I'm not voting against 54. At this point, because I'm just unsure of 4, that's the reason at this moment. But obviously, Tuesday's another day. So
Item is opposed by Council Members Ortiz and Council Member Lupien.
Clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 3-2 into the record with Council Member Lupien and Ortiz voting no.
That completes the work of the Neighborhood and Business Development Committee. We are adjourned.
Okay, I am going to call the Parks and Public Works Committee to order. I know that we got to do some Zoom musical chairs, but in the meantime, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Councilmember Gruber,
Here.
Councilmember Evans,
Present.
Councilmember Peel,
Here.
Vice President Lightfoot,
Here.
President Scott.
Here.
Okay, introductory number 302, authorizing an engineering design services agreement for railroad crossings within the 2021 milling and resurfacing project, Child Street, Dewey Avenue, and Glide Street. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
Move it.
Been moved
Second.
and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Introductory number 303, a bond ordinance of the City of Rochester, New York, authorizing the issuance of $806,000 bonds of said city to finance the Cottage Magnolia Street Rehabilitation Project. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
Move it.
Move. Is
Second.
there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Peel, you're on mute.
No, I heard.
Second.
There we go.
I heard.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Introductory number 304, bond ordinance of the City of Rochester, New York, authorizing the issuance of $571,000 bonds of said city to finance water service improvements associated with Cottage Magnolia Street Rehabilitation Project. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
Move it.
I'll take a motion.
Second.
Move it.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Introductory number 305, authorizing appropriations and agreements for the Cottage Magnolia Street Rehabilitation Project. Any questions, comments, or concerns? If not, I'll take a motion.
Move it.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Introductory number 306, bond ordinance further amending the bond ordinance in ordinance number 2018-334 as amended by ordinance number 2020-184 to authorize the issuance of $1,340,000 bonds of the city of Rochester, New York to finance construction and construction inspection services related to the East Henrietta Road Improvement Project, South City Line to Stan Yale Drive. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Now let's take a motion.
Move it.
It's been moved
Second.
and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes.
Clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Introductory number 307, amending ordinance numbers 2019-313 and 2014-143 in relation to the Waring Road Improvement Project. I'll just make a quick comment to point out the attention to the fact that amending ordinance in 2017, there were public meetings on this piece from 2012. This has been a long time coming. City projects sometimes take a very long time, but patience is a virtue, and it looks like this is going to be a really wonderful project. Any questions, comments, or concerns from people? If not, I'll take a motion.
Move it.
Been
Second.
moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes.
Clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Introductory number 308, authorizing an agreement for the Weaver Street Rehabilitation Project. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
Thank you very much. It's my comment. Thank you, Norm. I absolutely appreciate you, and I know the neighbors are extremely ecstatic. Thank you.
Who said that?
Yeah. Funny. Thank you.
Well, just
Yeah.
just a brief comment on that. This is was an example of the mayor having us go out into the community and doing
On that walk.
doing that walk, taking the entire DES senior group out and just walking the street, seeing what's going on, talking to the community. And this was about 4 years ago, made a commitment, and we're fulfilling our commitments. And that's what, I think that's what it's all about, being out there, being visible. And Jackie, yeah, you asked me what was going on every step of the way. And now we're at a point where we're making this happen. So
Yes, thank you.
you're welcome.
All the time. Where did you have to do?
Motion to adopt.
Sorry, Malik, go ahead.
I said motion to adopt.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Introductory number 309, authorizing term agreements for mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineering services. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Now I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Introduction number 310, bond ordinance of the City of Rochester, New York, authorizing the issuance of $3 million bonds of said city to finance a portion of the costs of the Joseph A. Floriano Rochester Riverside Convention Center escalator replacements project. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
I have a question. Shows that we're doing 6 escalators. 2 of them will be replaced. I'm sorry, 4 of them will be replaced to make them into fixed stairs. Is there a way we can just work on 2 of them at this point and then change the other 4 later on once we are past this pandemic to save some money?
Well, actually, Councilperson Pio, we did do value engineering on this particular project, and the actual bid came in probably about $1.5 million higher. And what we were able to do is look at certain aspects of the proposal and eliminate certain things and take some of the conveyances out and put in fixed stairs that will not impact our ADA requirements and cause an impediment for the actual convention center activities. The actual escalators there have been, if you've attended an event in the past, they've been problematic. And we're at a point now where we have to have all of these conveyances worked on, or it will have a detrimental impact on the operation of that facility. So we did do value engineering. We did make some adjustments. We did remove certain items out to bring that into a better range, probably about $1.2 million worth of savings. And that's a credit to our engineering staff and for thinking out of the box.
If no further questions, I'll
Kind of on that same line, you know, we don't really know when the convention center will be able to host events again. And with the, you know, not knowing what our finances will look like, how the COVID will continue to impact our finances, you know, just wondering the grant funding that's being given, you know, should we postpone this project? What are the implications?
Well, actually, no, we should not postpone the project. We will not be able to get a better price than what we have right now. And the time to do the escalators and do a construction project like this is when the facility is not being utilized. This is a perfect time to do this. So when we get through COVID, and when people start scheduling things and people start using our facilities again, we don't want to shut them down to repair things. Let's take advantage of this opportunity that we have. And I think the timing is perfect for us to do that.
Thank you.
Any further questions? I will just state, you know, in terms of the questions from Councilmember Pio and Councilmember Lupien, you know, no doubt we all have to be very mindful of our city's operating budget. I'll just point out that less than 2 months ago, this council voted 9-0 in favor of the way that we handle our debt limit this year. Nothing right now is being proposed to be outside of that. I believe that legislation specifically called out projects we're funding this month. So, you know, it's certainly easy to question these dollars, but they're multi-year projects. We voted in consensus on our debt limit, and I think giving the administration the opportunity to do what they said they were going to do makes sense in this case. So sorry, did someone have something to say? Okay, I'll take a motion.
Move it.
Looking for a second.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
And I have to abstain, Mr. Chairman, as a member of the Convention Center Board.
Thank you.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 401 into the record with Councilmember Evans abstaining.
Introductory number 311, authorizing funding for the Joseph A. Floriano Rochester Riverside Convention Center escalator replacements projects. Questions, comments, or concerns? If not, I'll take a motion.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
And again, I will have to abstain from that item.
One abstention. Motion passes.
Clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 401 into the record with Councilmember Evans abstaining.
Introduction number 312, authorizing an agreement for a shared mobility system. This is incredibly exciting. I've said it a couple times before. It was awful that we did not have a bike share program for this year, but of all years to not have a bike share program, I think when we have a pandemic and a virus that lives on surfaces, it's probably not the worst thing in the world that we took this year off of having a bike share, but it's great that we're getting it back in full swing. I do have a couple of questions before I hand it off to my colleagues. And first is really around the dollars. There are no dollars being discussed in this legislation right now. I know in the past we used some federal monies to pay for Zagster. I'm wondering first and foremost if we have the clearance to use those federal monies to transfer over to Hopper.
All right. Eric Frisch, our transportation manager and our Rock the Riverway expert, and a guy that's wearing so many hats he's losing his hair, is on the Zoom meeting, and he can answer that question. Eric.
Sure. Thanks, Commissioner. Yes, council member, we have received preliminary approval from New York State DOT that we can utilize remaining funds from our congestion mitigation air quality federal grant that was left over from the previous. We're still identifying what that amount is. As it was shared between multiple different shared mobility modes. But yes, there will be funding available, and we will, once we identify what that funding is, we'll return to council at that time.
That's great news. I assume there's going to be a significant amount of fundraising to do still. I recall, obviously before my time on council, but I recall that there was fundraising done by Zagster, by the city, and some of our big employers and our big health insurance companies who wanted to invest in this. And we see that in other cities. Mayor, I was wondering if you have put any thought into how we're going to do, what the fundraising plan would be for this, if we have a dollar amount that we have in mind, and any strategies to get there.
So we have an internal team that's working with RGRTA. As we know, this was always, the city was a partner with Zagster. We kicked it off, we started off. We've tested a lot of different projects to see whether they would live and then somebody else owns it. I definitely want to thank Eric Frisch as well as Alex Udelson, who's on our team, and Kelly Maturko and all those, and Brenda, who worked in Ann Henry Fitz, who a number of years ago started all of these different initiatives to see whether they could live and grow here in Rochester. So this is definitely something that we appreciate as it pertains to how much money we will need to raise to keep it going. I don't know that we have a dollar amount yet. The fact that the state has said that we could utilize the other dollars that we had set aside for Zagster on this is going to help us. But we do know that our community partners are still very interested in this program. And because we're partnering with RGRTA on this particular one system for both the city as well as the surrounding areas, this is going to be a lighter lift because the money could be spread out further.
That's great, and I hope there's an opportunity for council to help in the fundraising process. I think you have a lot of really big biking advocates and enthusiasts on council. I've already heard Commissioner Jones wants to do a e-scooter race to raise money. He's going to obviously
No, I can't wait till e-scooters get here. That is one of the things that I like the bicycle, but I really like the e-scooters better. So looking forward to be able to ride that.
for the record, Commissioner Jones did not commit to riding a skateboard, doing e-scooters, doing Zoom bikes, doing Zumba, any of that. I did not commit to any of that. So I just want to make sure that everyone
Okay, well,
knows that. So
we'll see if I can pull out the record. But I do want to ask, Mayor, in terms of my last question, then I see Councilmember Harris has some. And I apologize, I'll have to talk to BJ about this. He attributed a question about a work group that I was chairing to me. I did not have that question, but I do want to know for sure if in fact the geofencing that we had talked about for the scooters, making sure that we can control speed limits at particular busy junctures, if that's something that Hopper allows us to do in the same way that Zaxter said they were going to be able to.
I will turn that over to Eric because he's more familiar with that.
Yes, thanks, Mary. Yeah, Hopper has the same, if not more advanced geofencing capabilities than our previous provider, and is willing to work with us on any sort of geofencing requirements in order to control the maximum speeds.
Excellent. Councilmember Harris?
Yes, I'm excited about this program. I too am a fan of the scooter. I have a question. I just wanted to know if with the new provider, will they still offer the services all throughout the entire city, or is it going to be certain locations? Or is that have you guys decided that yet?
Well, we have not identified specific locations at this time. That will be part of the contract negotiations that we'll have with them. But the goal is to at least have a system of similar size to Zaxter, and hopefully over time work with them to grow that even further. So we will work with them and do our best to extend the reach of the system all throughout the city.
And I also thank you very much. And I also saw that there was a follow-up question that was answered, that you guys plan to store them or to resume services after you store them during the summer months. I mean, not the summer months, the winter months. So my question is, will they be stored or will they remain in the location locked up like they have in previous?
During the winter months, they will have to take their equipment off of out of our right of way and store it in a warehouse, and other equipment that they use. If it's portable rack type of equipment, that would also need to be relocated to a warehouse.
Councilmember Harris, is that it for you?
Thank you.
Councilmember Pio, you had something to add?
Yes, just want to say I am extremely excited for this. I know that you can already see these in action over in the beach community over near Charlotte. So I want to make sure we call first dibs on them if we can. The whole city will be fantastic. But you already see them in action in Charlotte. It's a summer fun time type of scooter, and it's going to be so much fun. I really appreciate this in particular. I've been talking about it since January 1st, and everyone makes fun of me, but I think this is a big thing. I love it. Thank you so much.
Any further questions or comments on this before we take it to a vote? I'll take a motion then.
Move it.
Second.
Move in second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes.
Clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Introductory number 313, amending ordinance number 2019-336 relating to an agreement for resident project representation services for La Marqueta at the International Plaza. Questions, comments, or concerns? If not, I'll take a motion.
Move it.
Move.
Second.
And seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes.
Clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Introduction number 314, bond ordinance of the City of Rochester, New York, authorizing the issuance of $12,573,000 bonds of said city to finance a portion of the cost of the Rochester Police Department Goodman Section and Southeast Neighborhood Service Center project. Before I entertain any questions or comments from colleagues, I'd like to take a moment to make a few comments and ask some questions. First, I want to confirm to my colleagues that we have heard consistent support from the Southeast neighborhood groups, in particular the Beechwood Neighborhood Coalition, one of the biggest and most diverse neighborhood associations, has submitted a letter in support of this project, which is proposed to be built in their neighborhood. Time after time, constituents have asked this administration to make decisions about development based on input from neighbors. And so I say kudos to the mayor and Commissioner Jones for recently meeting with folks from the Beechwood Neighborhood Coalition and offering to create a committee from various Southeast neighborhoods to help determine the public art and landscaping of this project if it were to move forward. I think that's really important. There's a lot of small things that we can continue to do to make this a neighborhood service center, first and foremost, that it's welcoming to people. And there's a real opportunity for that if the project were to move forward. Second, I want to make a point about the dollars and cents for this project because we've received a number of emails from citizens asking us to instead use these dollars for things like back payment for rent, RCSD supports, and food. To be clear, City Council is being asked to bond for this project. Bonding is something that we can do for public works like buildings and roads, but not for operational costs like the things that have been recommended. Moreover, this is not additional money being added to any departmental budget. All 9 members of this council already voted yes on our debt limit for this year, which explicitly included this project. If this project were not to happen, this is money that cannot be repurposed elsewhere. I think that's really important for the community to understand. However, all those things aside, there are still very real and very legitimate concerns about moving forward with this project right now because of larger conversations happening both locally and nationally about reimagining public safety. The Commission on Race and Structural Equity just convened for the first time earlier this week, and one of its core charges is to make real, tangible changes to the way we consider policing. So with that in mind, I have some specific questions that I'd like to go through before I open it up to my colleagues. So my first question, Mayor, is when did the process begin to create new neighborhood service centers and section offices?
This began probably 6 years ago. When I first was elected mayor in 2014, we reimagined policing, wanted to do more community policing. One of the issues that came out of that discussion was returning police section offices back into the neighborhood so that neighbors would not only have build a relationship with the local police station, but they wanted it back in the neighborhood. We also have neighborhood service centers that had, first it started on Clinton Avenue, then it was too small. We made an agreement to have it at the current location off of Goodman. It's in a not necessarily a space that is to be seen directly from the street. Is not necessarily inviting a location. So we work with the neighbors to actually combine both the police station and the neighborhood service center because we want the building to be utilized and seen as a neighborhood asset. We've been working on this with the previous council member for a number of years who also sent a letter basically detailing what I just told you.
So when you were first elected, this was a conversation about creating new section offices. Were there studies, were there surveys? Is there any data to support the move back to neighborhood-based sections?
Yes, we did an extensive project. It was a year-long process that was led by Deputy Chief Mark Simmons, where we analyzed remember we were in 2 sections. And so we were east and west. From that discussion, we went to 5 sections, the 4 neighborhood sections and then downtown. And so there was extensive review discussion with a lot of community involvement at the time. And this is just finishing the process. And finding a location was then we organized in place. That was the big thing. We didn't want to necessarily organize and, buy a building or build a building and then reorganize. We wanted to make sure that what we were doing was the best way to offer policing and the best model. And at the time, it was the 5-section model based on the amount of calls. And so we reorganized in place. The next step was to actually find a location, work with the neighbors to locate the building and to design the building. And now it's time to start building.
I think it would be really helpful to be able to share some of the work that Chief Simmons, Deputy Chief Simmons led. Council has pretty much has almost fully turned over since then. And I think just refreshing some people on what was discussed with the community would be really helpful.
So to that
specifically
question,
related. Go ahead, Deputy Chief. Yep.
So we actually, let me turn my camera on. I apologize. But we conducted an evaluation, and a part of that evaluation, we worked with RIT to do community surveys. And we did community surveys as well as internal surveys. And one of the consistent things that came out of those surveys was the fact that although the public and our staff were happy to return to the community policing model and being in the 5 sections, it didn't necessarily feel like a true return because there weren't section offices. And it was resoundingly clear that the community members wanted section offices, a place that was nearby that they can walk to, get to know the officers better, and the officers felt the same. So we do have those survey instruments as well as the evaluation, and we can certainly share that with you.
Thank you. I would appreciate that very much. I'm sure the rest of council would too. Now, specifically when it comes to this project and this location and all of that, when did work start on the Goodman section office? When was the site selected? What's the history there?
The site was selected, I believe, 3 years ago. It was selected 3 years ago. There were some environmental concerns that we had to deal with. There were also some property acquisitions that we needed to do. And so we went to and worked with the Beechwood Neighborhood Association, the North Winton Neighborhood Association, and talked to Bensonhurst, all of those. Captain Kyler was captain at the time, extensively involved in this process of where we would include the East District. We located it on East Main Street because it is the central part of the East District. We wanted it to be in a place where people could access it, especially the neighborhood service center. And so about years ago, the location was secured. And then we went about acquiring the land, finishing the cleanup. And at the same time we're doing this, we are also working on a major road construction project on East Main Street. And so these are all investments that the Beechwood and Emma and all of the neighbors in this area has been very intricately involved in. We have, several meetings, not only from this public meetings from this particular project, but also from our road construction project, all of it going into this neighborhood. We have thousands of cars that travel down this street every day. And so we want to be able to make sure that the completion of the road and the station are done at the same time.
So how much money has to this point, because this, just to reiterate, this has been a 6-year project and at least 3 years of activity there. How much money has already been spent on the Goodman section office and neighborhood service center?
We spent about $2.1 million in direct and indirect costs thus far, about $800,000 in study and design, about $830,000 in acquisition and relocation, And, you know, our staff time, you know, would equate to being about $500,000.
And if we were to hold this for a while the Raise Commission does their work, what would be the cost to taxpayers? I mean, some of what we're doing in this legislation is not just the bonding, but it's also accepting grant dollars. Commissioner Jones already mentioned some bid guarantees. Do you have an estimate of what the cost to taxpayers would be by holding this legislation right now?
So this project is a part of a number of larger projects. So all 4 construction projects would need to be publicly rebid, as material, labor costs can change significantly during a 6-month time period. Bid results can vary up to 30% right now, as it pertains to the cost or the bond market has been really good to us. We're getting really good rates right now. Construction, you know, costs have been really good. So because, you know, we're in a pandemic, all the prices have come down. Now, I can tell you, if we would have bid this a year ago before the pandemic, we would be paying a lot more money than what we're paying now. Additionally, you know, city staff and consultants cost, those costs would have to be rebid. That can cost about upwards of $50,000. The building construction schedule are directly coordinated, as I said, with the East Main Street reconstruction project. So, you know, at the same time that we're going to be building this building, we're going to have to be doing all the utilities in the street, the driveway, the curb cuts, the bus shelters, the sidewalks, the bike paths, lighting. All of that is included in this project. So delaying the building project could result in significant increases on the road construction project that is, I don't know if you've driven down East Main Street, and it's not in the best of repair right now. So that too can, those costs will go up as well.
And just for clarity, so you said that there's 4 projects that would have to be rebid. So it's the section office, it's East Main Street. What are the other 2?
So so we're also doing some water quality work as well. And so the water mains, you know, the water mains, as well as the project to close off the street here on Main Street. I believe that those are all 4. If you want, Commissioner Jones, is that all 4?
Yep, exactly. We'll be abandoning the street partially. Am I on? Okay, yeah. We'll be abandoning the street partially. There's water main works, there's street lighting works, and the way we've scheduled this, and we've gotten pretty good at it, we sequence things, and this will take us out of our sequence. And the way we sequence it, it was able for us to come in right now about $3 million under the engineer's estimate. Potential of bidding it out 6 months, 9 months later, has potential of coming up 30 to 40% more. And if we're going to bid it out, we'd have to have it ready to go out for bid right now. If you're asking that, and we're not ready to rebid it right now because we'd have to change a lot of things, and the bidding environment may not be the same. So we've been really good at sequencing it, changing the way we bid things, and making sure that we are coordinating, you know, the street work and the building work, doing the building first, street second, in a sequence.
So just to be clear, if we were to halt this project right now, the result would be that East Main Street would be halted until after there was resolution and either not building or building of this project. Is that right?
No, I have to keep East Main Street going because there's a expiration date on the dollars that I have from the DTC, which is our MPO for Main Street. So I need to do Main Street on that sequence, on that schedule. So what's going to happen if I halt the building, that means I'm going to be doing utility cuts into a brand new street that's going to be against the actual code requirements that I just changed, and will have me basically cutting in, making cuts into a unitary pour, a fresh pavement, if we don't do the building first.
I think
street
that,
second.
so more importantly than just the cutting of the streets, I think that it's gonna cost taxpayers millions more dollars to do this later. And it can, you know, we all know that when you redo a street, and the cost that it's gonna cost us to do East Main, to actually cut into those, that pavement is going to completely alter what we just worked so hard to repair. Additionally, all of the work that has already been expended on this project, the $2.1 million, is also an issue. The neighborhood service center relocation is also an issue because we're under lease at the current place. So it will definitely alter a number of different, it has unintended consequences. And I think that we all have to be cognizant of.
Thank you. I would, in addition to the surveys that Chief Simmons talked about, I would really like, and I understand that they're estimates in part because you don't know what new bidding is going to bring back, and you don't know how much it's going to cost to do those curb cuts, but some type of estimate for this council to see of what the cost of taxpayers would be by holding this, I think is really important. But my last question, and I think probably the most important one, is let's assume that the Raise Commission actually does what we say we're going to do, right? And I've heard you talk about it, Mayor. I know you're serious about it, and that it truly results in the reimagining of policing and public safety as we expect it to. How can we guarantee the continued and flexible and utility of this building? How can we guarantee that spending this money right now, knowing that we're trying to change and reimagine how we do public safety, is still going to allow this to be a well-used municipal building?
The building is designed for maximum flexibility. So the building is designed to include the community. And so one of the things that people have been talking about is, you know, having more social workers or more access to individuals with mental health. Well, those individuals are going to have to work out of somewhere. And so the building is designed to, whether it's police officers or a social worker or someone else that's involved in mental health, they would have an office or have a workspace. And what better place to have that than in a neighborhood, and be able to service people than in the community, than have to have people go outside of their community, outside of their neighborhood to get the services that we're talking about being able to provide. And I think that that's very important when you look at what we're trying to do here. This is, the first building that will have the neighborhood service center and the police station located together. Any of that space can be converted to recognize whatever the recommendations come from race. And we want to be able to have people in the neighborhood to be served in their community. And this is on a major bus line. Our GRTA is located right down the street. Again, the community has overwhelmingly that lives here been working on this for a number of years, and they have been supportive of this project. And I think that it would be a travesty to them if it did not go forward, in consideration of possible changes with other entities coming online to also work and be located in the neighborhood with them.
Councilmember Evans?
No, I just wanted to make two quick points. The one point I wanted to make is, and I'm glad Councilmember Gruber kind of sketched at the beginning the history of this. I think as council members, we have a obligation and opportunity not to confuse people, but to educate them, particularly as it relates to sources and uses of funds. And I think one of the things we have to do is to not tell people that we can do things that we can't, particularly as it relates to bonding and our capital improvement. We can't take money that is bonded, as to your point, Councilmember Gruber, and use it for providing food, for example. So it's important that we continue to educate the public on things that we can do. And that's why I'm such a big supporter of the Parent Leadership Training Institute, for example. I was a founding member of that because I think it's important that people who are on the ground and in the community have a voice on these things, and not folks who jump on an issue, don't really know all the particulars. Like, for example, this has been going on for 6 years, the development of East Main Street. We've been talking about that for 6 years or more, as Commissioner Jones knows. So that's important. The second point I wanted to make is that I hear people talking about the police substation. I care about the police substation, but equally as important are our neighborhood service centers. And I think people need to understand the importance of those centers. And prior to the neighborhood service centers, people remember they were called the neighborhood empowerment teams centers. And as a young person, that's where I got my start. I can't tell you how many community meetings I attended at those neighborhood empowerment team centers that were in the neighborhood, particularly in the Southwest. I was a youth representative on the Southwest Common Councils. I was their youth representative, and neighborhood disputes were worked out there. There are many city halls. There are places for people that can't go down to 30 Church Street to share their concerns about an issue. They can go to these neighborhood service centers. And where this one is going to be strategically located is ideal. With all the development that we're putting an investment into East Main Street, that's important. And then the last point I want to make is that the neighborhood has spoken on this. This is not something that we're just pulling out of the air and saying we want to do this. I know that NBD and DES, the mayor's office, they have engaged in years with conversations from people. The previous council member has engaged in previous conversations with people on this project. So I think it's important to put this into context. I think we need to continue to have conversations about how we spend money, but it's equally important that we give people the correct information, because otherwise we're doing a disservice to the larger community when we have them believe that we are spending money on something that we could be spending money on, like, for example, giving money to the school district. We can't do that with these funds. People know that. And it may sound good for us to say that to someone, and we may score a quick political point, but it's really not fair to individuals to do that. So I think that we need to look at the totality of this project and also respect the hard work of all the neighborhood organizations and people that have worked on this over the years. And I intend on supporting it.
Any further questions, comments, or concerns?
Yes.
Councilmember Lupien?
So I want to address a couple of points that I've heard, but overall, I'd like to say that, we are in different times than we were when this project was first talked about, and I would like to separate it from East Main Street because they are different projects. And I'm very happy about the East Main Street improvements, and they're going to be a great benefit to the neighborhood. But this subsection office combination with NSC, that's different. We are in a pandemic where our finances are not certain. We don't know how long this is going to impact us. And we are, as Councilmember Gruber said, really embarking on this process to reimagine public safety. And to borrow $12.5 million of a total of $16 million project, when we don't know what the end result will be. And I hear that, taxpayer money could be increased with waiting, but the cost of building this building, if we ultimately decide as a city to go a different way, would be much greater. To the point of the study done on policing, it sounds, and I'd like to see more about that, but it sounds like it was done around East-West model versus the 5 section offices, and not necessarily around moving those 5 section offices deeper into the neighborhoods. And I don't know if there's data to really support having a section office more centrally located in the district would have any better outcomes in policing. You know, we know that having cops walk the beat is more about priorities in terms of how they spend their time and not where they're located. Co-locating a neighborhood service center and the police station, you know, could actually harm community relations because it could deter people from visiting the neighborhood service center that are fearful of police. So I think COVID gives us an opportunity to pause, and we should take that pause to reevaluate our priorities. And in terms of bonding, you know, right, it's borrowing money. We can't borrow money to necessarily give to the school. Well, we could give to the school district, but for other things. However, it's robbing future budgets when we pay down that debt service. And that money could be used for other things that, you know, our community supports that we know do create public safety and prevent crime. And so I think it's, you know, an opportunity to take a step back and reevaluate our priorities and where we spend money.
I'm happy to open up to other people. We don't need to get into a debate about this. Ultimately, I agree with a lot of your points, Councilmember Lupien. I can't deny the fact that it feels hard to bond and borrow money right now in a pandemic when there's so much uncertainty, and that we're doing some hard work around reimagining public safety. I would just point out once again that less than 2 months ago, we all, including you, all of us, voted on this debt limit, not 9-0 in the vote, and it included specifically language on this project, which has been undertaken for 6 years now. And stopping it at this point, all it does is it erases the $2.1 million or so that have been spent. And I believe that we can have some assurance from this administration that this building is going to be a flexible use municipal building, which is something that no matter what we end up doing with the Raise Commission is going to end up being beneficial to the neighborhood and reflective of the changes that we want in public safety. So I'm happy to open it up for further questions.
Dr. Gruber, I just want to ask a point of clarification to Deputy Chief Simmons, if you don't mind, sir. Deputy Chief Simmons, it's my understanding, because that's one of the issues that I was hearing about, you know, the ability for the building to be used by the community and the access of it to the community as opposed to it being a police station as well. And it's my understanding that the community section of this particular building is separate from the actual police use portion of the building. Is that correct, that the community section of the building, that there are separate interests and separate ways of the community to be able to access this space?
That is correct. Working with DES and the architectural firm to help design the building, we were very mindful of the fact that we wanted this building to be a mixed-use facility for the community to come. There was a lot of green space so the community can come and walk through, or even we imagine having a lunch in the facility. And there's a separate interest for the NSC offices versus the police officers. So yes, this is a very open building, and we kept the community in mind every single day.
Thank you.
And I just want to be clear that this is not a location that's going to have that has jail cells. It's not. It's a building that is an office space for our officers to gather, to be able to do roll call, for our community to have community meetings, for the neighborhood service center to work very closely with our officers and have a better relationship. And so I want to be clear on that. I also want to be clear that these are all dollars that, you know, just 2 months ago, while we were in a pandemic, that all of you approved. You know, you passed the budget, you passed the bonding, the ordinance for this, the legislation for this. And so this isn't something that's new or that we pulled out of the sky. These are things that have been working on for a number of years. And as it pertains to what we looked at, we, of course, throughout all of this, have had extensive community discussion and community support from the neighbors that actually live in this neighborhood and live in this community. I remember when I was on city council and you know, the brewery wanted to do, wanted to demolish a building. And we had neighbors and people come from all over the county to talk about why this building should not be demolished. And there was a woman that lived across the street in St. Simon Apartments that came, and it was only a few of them. But one of the things she said, she looked at the audience and she said, "Who lives here? Who lives here?" And when she said that, and she's the only person in that room that raised her hand and said, "I live here. And this is what I want for my neighborhood." We have to listen to the people that elected us to represent them, the neighbors for the last 6 years. And if you say, okay, well, 6 years is too long ago. Well, 3 years ago, 3 years is too long ago. Just this past year, just this past month has sent letters, have advocated, has talked about this. The people that live here. This is something that they are looking for. This is something that they have invested their time, their energy, and something that they have requested for. So I am saying that, of course, not every neighbor agrees with it, but the majority of those individuals that I've spoken to, that I've attended Beechwood neighborhood meetings, and all of those neighborhoods have all said, this is what we want. Please proceed. Please do this for us. And I think that despite everything, we're not always going to agree, but I think that one thing that we can agree on is that when neighbors have invested their time, their energy, and in there to support into something, that as a city government, that we should listen to them.
I really appreciate you bringing up that argument about, or that point about the neighborhoods, because that's something I failed to mention. The Beechwood board did support it. However, to your point, not all neighbors are in agreement. You know, even on the board, there was a split decision. And, you know, it also raises up, you know, the point that many neighborhood groups don't necessarily represent the neighbors that live in the neighborhood. You know, there's a lot of systemic reasons why, you know, more well-off voices are more represented on neighborhood boards. And that's true across the city. You know, we are in different times. Many people are waking up to the realities of policing, and to go off of, you know, prior neighborhoods, even the subcommittee that's being created to talk about this, there's division even on that subcommittee. And so to say that the neighbors support this with a broad brush is, I don't think accurate. And I think that many of the people that I represent support my position as well.
So I'm glad that you brought that up, and that's the reason why we do door knocking. That's the reason why we talk directly to the people that live there. And I can tell you that I have walked your neighborhood extensively, and I have talked to a lot of people, and they want development in their neighborhood. They want this project. They want the East Main Street Road construction project. And I have talked directly to them. And so, you know, I mean, I'm not saying that 100% of the people live in a neighborhood, of course, are going to agree, but the majority of them that live in Beechwood, that live in Emma, that live in North Winton Village, the majority of them agree with moving forward on this particular project. And to say otherwise would be a disservice, because many of them have voiced their concerns and they live there, and they want this particular project to go forward. I live in the neighborhood as well. And I can tell you that I've spoken to my neighborhood, my neighbors as well about the project. And so what I'm saying is that, yes, times have changed and things are different. And this building could be utilized to do some of the other things that people want to be able to do. Some things that I know that Vice President Lightfoot and the Gun Violence Coalition have been working on. And so I'm saying respect those people, and it's okay to not agree. We can agree to disagree on this.
And I will definitely agree to disagree. I don't think either of us can say that the majority of residents agree or disagree to this project. Okay, and I have obviously knocked on doors in my neighborhood as well.
I can.
I'm gonna take a moment of privilege, Councilmember Lupien, Mayor Warren, because the last thing I want to oversee is a Zoom debate. If we were in the same room, it might be a different story. But here's, I'm sure you're both right. And I don't question that either of you live in the neighborhood. I don't question that either of you know your communities. And I don't question that either of you are coming at this from the right place in your hearts and in your brains. But here's what I know for sure after some conversation. First and foremost, it is very, very clear that no matter what we want to talk about, the fact is there's already been a significant amount of dollars spent on this building. And there's dollars that we are going to lose if we don't continue to move it forward. But most importantly to me is that this needs to be something that we say, and it's already been stated on the record, and I'm going to ask for it in writing, that we have the opportunity to use this space flexibly. That if and when the Raise Commission comes back and changes the way that we think of public safety and adds things or changes things or subtracts things from the police department, that we have an opportunity to use a neighborhood-based building as a space to do some of that work. Because municipal office space is something that we're going to continue to need. And with that, I would ask the administration to follow up with 3 things based on our conversation. First, I'd like Deputy Simmons to be, or whomever, to share the information on the survey that was taken. Second, I would like some type of estimate as to how much expense in taxpayer dollars it would cost to halt this project now. And third, I'd like something in writing that talks about the flexible use of this space, the fact that it's not being built as a holding cell, but it's an office building that's going to allow for us to flex to what the recommendations of the Raise Committee are. I'd like those 3 things prior to the council meeting on Tuesday, but I am going to bring it out of committee now, and I'll entertain a motion, please.
Move it. Moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes.
So Member Gruber, this is Josanne. I have recorded all of those asks. Okay, so you'll get that prior to the meeting Tuesday.
Thank you. I need to hear the clerk just confirm the vote.
Madam Clerk, you are muted.
Sorry. The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Finally, introduction number 315, authorizing an agreement and funding for the Rochester Police Department Goodman Section and Southeast Neighborhood Service Center project. Any additional questions, comments, or concerns?
Move it.
Second.
Second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes.
Clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
And with that, we conclude the Parks and Public Works Committee. Thank you.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. At this time, I'd like to call the Public Safety, Youth and Recreation Committee to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Vice President Lightfoot.
Present.
Councilmember Gruber.
Here.
Councilmember Harris.
Present.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Here.
President Scott.
Here.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Starting off with introduction number 316, authorizing a mandatory agreement for Rachel Ray Save Them All grant from the Best Friends Animal Society. Any questions, comments, and/or concerns?
Motion to adopt.
I have a motion. I have a second. We go to vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Introductory passes. I'm sorry, go ahead, Madam Clerk.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Introduction number 317, amending the 2020-21 budget for increasing the appropriations for the Rochester Police Department to carry over unspent grant funds. Any questions, comments, and/or concerns? I entertain a motion.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Ortiz, second by Councilwoman Harris. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Introductory passes.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Introductory number 318, authorizing a mandatory agreement for a complex coordinated Terrorist Attack Grant. Any questions, comments, and/or concerns? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Introduction passes. We got one opposed. So by Councilmember Gruber.
Correct.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 4-1 into the record with Councilmember Gruber voting no.
Thank you. Introductory number 319, authorizing an intermunicipal agreement for the Pathways to Peace program. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
Move to adopt.
Second.
I've moved, I have a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Introductory passes.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Introductory number 320, authorizing an agreement with the Rochester Area Community Foundation for the Quad A for Kids after school program at city schools. Any questions, comments, and/or concerns? If not, I entertain a motion.
I guess
So moved.
I have one question,
Stand
Councilman.
by. Councilmember Gruber. Yes, sir.
I guess I'm just struggling to understand generally how the dollar amounts for virtual programs stay the same as when they were in person.
Administration?
Because it's the same people that are providing those services and to the same amount of kids. So the cost to provide the services to the children doesn't change just because it's virtually. They still have to track, monitor, sign in, and work with the children and they still need the staff to do so.
And so these dollars go primarily to staff. Staffing didn't change, so dollar amount doesn't change.
Correct. That's my understanding. We can get further clarification, but unless the commissioner has a different understanding, that staffing has not changed, the number of children has not gone down, they will still be providing those same services. And the Quad A for Kids program generally work with the elementary school kids. And so my understanding is that the school district will be opening from K-5 and in building services for them. So we definitely want to be able to provide service after school for them as well.
Yeah, I want to take a point of privilege as well here too. I've been struggling with this, but I think I need to ask this question. There's been a lot of controversy around this Quad A for Kids and funding and past council members and things of that nature. It'd be nice to get an update of if there was a audit or whatnot to just give people peace of mind as to that this money is going and being used in the appropriate manners.
The Community Foundation did do an audit. And they audited, they found that there was some discrepancies, not in our dollars, but in other dollars that were provided. And they actually settled with the AG's office on that. And so, despite the issues that might have been there, the Community Foundation has corrected those, and it did not affect the ongoing support for the program and the ability to provide services to kids.
Is there a possibility for us to get that, have that in writing, just so we can have an event constituents or anyone question us about why are we still giving money to this particular organization when there were some discrepancies in the past? I mean, can we have a copy of that?
There's a new executive director, new programming, and so there's a new executive director first, and I know that they're still providing the program, but we can ask them to provide, I don't know if we can get a copy of that audit, but we can get a letter basically stating that they have taken care of everything that they did.
Just something in writing, I think would be suffice, Madam Mayor. I appreciate that. And I think our other council members and the community would appreciate that as well too. Any other questions, comments, and/or concerns? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
So moved.
It's been
Second.
motion and double second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Introductory passes. Introductory number.
I'm sorry. The clerk
No,
will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Introduction number 321, authorizing an agreement for the fire station alerting systems. Just want to ask the chief if I think he's on board. I did not ask this question in agenda review, but I do have this question. Will there be any downtime in between the transition of the new alerting system based on the past alerting system? Will there be any time where there'll be any downtime between both systems?
You mean in the transition process, Council?
Yes, sir.
So I don't believe so. I have Dave Compton, who's been doing the research on it on the line, and he probably can give you a more definitive answer than I can. Are you on, Chief?
I'm here. Can you hear me? Yeah, yes, sir. Hey, how you doing, Chief? Hi, Will. All right. Good to see you. Good to see you as well. No, there's going to be no downtime at all. The way it's explained to us is that they're going to overlay it and then cut over once. We haven't actually determined if we're going to cut over station by station or all at once, but should be no downtime.
So no up all night watches?
Correct.
That's a shame. You should make them young boys feel that. But anyway, thank you, Chief.
Okay,
Thank you, Chief. Any other questions, comments, and/or concerns? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
I need a second. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Introductory passes.
Clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
You're welcome.
Introduction number 322, amending ordinance number for 2017-368 in relation to the provisions of text 911 services for the Emergency Communication Department. Any questions, comments, or concerns? I know we have our director online. If anybody has any questions concerning the 911 provisions of texting. If not, I'm sorry. If not, entertain a motion.
A move. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Introductory passes.
Clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 5-0 into the record.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
You're welcome.
If there is no other business to come before the Public Safety, Youth, and Recreation Committee, we are adjourned.
And we will call the committee of the whole to order and ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Councilmember Evans.
Present.
Councilmember Gruber.
Here.
Councilmember Harris.
Present.
Councilmember Lupien.
Here.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Here.
Councilmember Patterson. It up. Councilmember Pio.
Here.
Vice President Lightfoot.
Here.
President Scott.
Here. Our first item of business, introductory number 323, approving an appointment to the Police Accountability Board. Questions, comments?
Madam President, I just want to say that it's been quite of an eye-opening to see how much talent that we have in this city. I mean, we are a talented city. And being a part of this process, of course, with yourself and Councilmember Gruber and other council members, we have been able to look at a lot of this talent within our community. And it's my pleasure to vote yes for this particular appointment. This young lady is another one of our stars in our community, I believe. And I'm looking forward to her joining the Police Accountability Board.
I agree. I'm very impressed. Any additional comments or questions? If there are none, I'll take a motion.
Move it,
Madam President.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion
I just
carries.
want to say,
I don't know what you said, but okay.
It sounded positive.
All right.
The clerk will enter-
Introductory. Oh, you got to enter it. I'm sorry, Madam Clerk.
So maybe that was a yes. The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 9-0 into the record.
Thank you.
good enough.
Introductory number 325, authorizing an intermunicipal cooperation agreement with the County of Monroe relating to the Commission on Racial and Structural Equity, RACE. Questions, comments?
I do have a comment, Madam President. I will be abstaining, of course, because I am on this particular commission. But I want to commend our mayor, the county executive. Of course, you know, myself, I've been a part of the racial equity work. I want to also commend Dr. Cephas Archie, who's adding support services to this particular initiative. We're being very intentional about the work that we've been doing here with our city and our employees, our change teams, our racial equity, all of the core team members. Too many to name right now. I don't want to leave anybody out and get in trouble. But there are a lot of our core team members who have been diligently about this work for the last 2.5 years when the mayor has put us on this charge of undoing racism within our city. So to see this with the civil unrest, to go to the next level, to me, which is the first time I've ever seen this type of partnership or this type of work being done within government, is amazing. But I want to address something that I've been hearing and seeing out in the communities. There's a narrative around certain people that didn't get chosen, didn't get picked. I've heard we had over 500 potential people, but over 200 some applicants, and they had to whittle that down to 21 applicants. And I just want people to understand that from our understanding from our first orientation, that there's going to be numerous, first of all, there's going to be a lot of community input and engagement around this work. It's not a top-down approach. We were not giving all of the details of this work because they were asking us, the community and the commissioners, to do this work from the grassroots level. And there'll be other opportunities for the community to engage in this work on committees. There are 9 committees that will be established, and this work is going to be very tough work, but I'm very optimistic, and I felt very good about the individuals that were in that room, some more talented individuals that were in that room, and the commitment that I've seen from our mayor and from the county executive. And I believe that they will be accountable for this work. And I'm proud to sit on this commission and through your appointment, Madam President, with my colleague, Dr. Gruber, and I'm excited about this work.
Mayor, would you just offer a couple of comments on this effort?
Thank you, Madam President. And so, before we get into the details of the budget and other things like that, I want to thank Vice President Lightfoot as well as Councilmember Gruber and yourself for appointing them to the Race Commission. We chose three chairs, to lead this effort, and they have been working not only with our team at City Hall being led by Dr. Archie, but also with Deputy Executive, County Executive Corinda Crosdell on her side. They developed an extensive review process because one thing that was very important to us, both the county executive and I, was that this was not a politically driven process for people that were chosen. We wanted it to be more so from the community and for people that typically do not get involved in governmental issues and not the same old people. So they embarked on and did an extensive job and an extraordinary job of really developing a process where anyone that wanted to be considered for appointment could be considered for appointment. There was over 500 people that started the application process, about 230 completed the full application. After that, they had a 15-panel community driven process by which they asked different community agencies, different community groups to select a person to serve. There were also individuals that had originally applied to be on the commission that decided that they would rather review applicants than actually serve. And so we allowed them to do that. They broke up into 3 separate sections of 5 to review the 200 applications. One of the things that was adamant that someone could not review the application of somebody that they knew. And so that was one of the requirements. Out of that, the 15-person panel submitted 41 names. to the co-chairs, the 3 co-chairs, and then the 3 co-chairs submitted 21 names to the county executive and I. They submitted 21 names to the county executive and I for us to choose 13 from that process. Now, part of this, solution is the fact that we're dealing with policing. And so we wanted the county sheriff, who's an elected official. We needed the police chief. We needed the county's public safety director. We also needed the people that are going to be in charge of policy. So county legislators, as well as people from city council, to be sitting alongside community members as we start to look at not just policing, but also across the board, our systems and how systematically they have been designed to do exactly what it's doing when it comes down to redlining, when it comes down to other specific issues of governmental policies that deal with people of color and holding them back. And this is the first time that we're really taking a deep dive, and cities across the country are doing different things, from reparations to other things. And so for us, we knew that this wasn't something that the city could do alone. And so that's when I reached out to the county executive and we decided to do this together. And so we're embarking on this new journey. Also, at the same time, the governor came in and said to our community, to communities across the state, you're going to have to look at policing, and I want to plan specifically to deal with how you're going to police communities differently and what that looks like. And so all of these things sort of came together at once. And we're trying to literally do something we've never done here before, which is truly look at systematic institutional barriers that have been put in place governmentally that have held Black and Brown communities back in housing, in policing, in education. And we're hopeful that after 6 months, there will be a plan that then both the county executive and I, along with council and the county ledge, can really look at and really figure out a way to deal with the systematic issues once and for all in the city of Rochester and the county of Monroe. This is a journey. It's not a perfect process. I know that a lot of people that wanted to be on this commission, people that I thought would have come through the process, were not. I can tell you that we have a host of good people that many of them I have never even met before. But after speaking to them, after hearing their testimony, after reading their resumes and their applications, I understand why they're in their own right, they have the expertise to be a part of this particular process. But as Vice President Lightfoot outlined, we didn't want to be exclusive in anybody. And so there are 8 committees that have been set up. We're asking people that want to continue to be a part of this work to actually be a part of the committee process. Many people want to focus on one particular issue. Some people want to focus on policing. Some people want to focus on jobs. Some people want to focus on education. And so therefore they will have the opportunity to work in the realm in which they would like to impact through the work that we're talking about doing. And so, so it's not an exclusive, it's to be inclusive, and it's supposed to be from the ground up. And that's exactly what I see and what I saw when this process was developed. And I have to commend the people that developed it, because it was a process that was free from influence. I don't know the 500 people that applied. I don't know the 200 people that applied, except for those individuals that contacted me or said, hey, I'm applying, or those individuals that contacted me after they were not selected. And so we wanted it to be fair. It was a fair process, a process that I support. And I know that the co-chairs worked very, very hard to get the best people to be able to lead the work so that we can do what we need to do on behalf of the Black and Brown community in moving it forward and removing these systematic barriers.
Well, I want to thank you, Madam Mayor, and my colleagues on council for willingness to do the work. I want to encourage you and at the same time warn you, do not grow weary in well-doing. because there's a lot of passion around, and some people are going to be upset, and there are going to be some who, no matter what you do, will not be pleased. But as long as it's clear what is being done and that there is inclusivity, I say again, simply do not grow weary in well-doing. With that, if there are no other questions, I'd entertain a motion.
I actually have I just want to.
We have a question. Councilmember Lupien.
Yeah, I just wanted to say too that I'm very hopeful for the results of this commission, and I think it has the potential to do really great work in many areas in the city and county. But I wanted to ask specifically around the choice to appoint the police union president, Mike Mazzio, who has really been a consistent barrier to reform and who is a barrier to our own police accountability board. Why we thought that he would be a productive member of this conversation.
I can tell you that through the discussions with the co-chairs, when we're talking about, we are a union organization, and a lot of things that we have to negotiate. If you get a better understanding by being at the table, how people feel, what they deal with on a daily basis, and are able to really understand where the community is coming from, then I believe that you may have a change of heart. You may be able to do some things differently. Instead of doing it against somebody, you do it with them, and you're able to go along and have a better relationship because the person was at the table when the decisions and the choices and the recommendations and when people were speaking were being made. Now, I'm not saying that it will be a perfect situation and that, that there will be a change. That is our hope, that by working together and being at the table and working with the community, that he will be able to see and hear what the community has been saying and what they feel, and the results of the recommendations will reflect those changes.
Madam Mayor, I sure hope you're right, because especially concerning that he's a co-chair of that committee, I worry that he could influence the outcome in a way that maybe goes against what the community is asking for. So I'll join you in your hope in that.
He's one vote out of 21. So I think that regardless of feelings, or if there isn't a change of heart or which way it goes, that we have a number of people around the table that can speak to this issue and make sure that whatever changes are being proposed are ones that benefit the entire community and our police department as a whole.
Thank you. We had a motion offered by Councilmember Evans. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Say nay. Motion
Abstention.
carries. Madam Clerk, record the vote, please.
The clerk will enter the affirmative vote of 702 into the record, with Vice President Lightfoot abstaining and Councilmember Gruber abstaining.
Well, that concludes the business for the Committee of the Whole, and it concludes the business of the Council committee hearings. We've successfully extended our meeting to 6 p.m. And would normally have had public hearings at 5. Fortunately, we don't have public hearings tonight. So we will talk again on August 18th when these matters come before the full council. I'd like to thank you all for being here and bid you all adieu.